Madam Minister, good morning. Thank you for taking the time to visit the Graduate Institute during your short stay in Geneva. You have been Mexico's Foreign Affairs Minister now since 2006, and you were also the President of the Conference of the Parties on Climate Change in Cancun. If you allow me, I would like to focus more specifically on your role in that conference. Now, before the conference started, most observers thought that nothing would come out of Cancun. What were your own personal views going into these negotiations?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for this opportunity and for the opportunity to be in contact and be able to communicate with the members of this wonderful institution, which I am so proud to have been a part of. So I'm really happy. After many years, this is my first visit back to the Institute, so I'm very happy about that. And regarding the conference, yes, you're absolutely right. In fact, I could tell you until the very last moment, even of the same day that the conference was ending, we really didn't know what to expect, exactly what we could be able to reach. It was, there was a lot of pessimism after what had happened in the Copenhagen conference. And there were really a lot of reluctance by many political actors to really get involved because everybody was scared to get involved again in some kind of exercise that would result in a lack of success. But I was worried. We really had a lot of pressure on us. It was very clear to us that at stake were not only the climate change negotiations themselves, but also in many ways the multilateral system altogether. If we look at how difficult the multilateral system has found to build up some kind of agreements in the different areas, very important areas, let's see the example of the Doha round. For so many years, it has not been able to come to a successful end. I was really convinced that this would mean for the UN as a whole a very, very bad situation. So we were very worried. This is precisely why we decided to work very hard from the beginning of the year in trying to build up a new atmosphere, an atmosphere of trust, an atmosphere of inclusiveness, so that all actors, absolutely all actors from governments and other entities could have a voice and could participate in the process, and also to have a process that would give privilege to dialogue and trying to understand each other's positions and situations.
And that paid off because you could see the document of the Working Party on Long-Term Cooperative Action was very successful. And what are the main achievements, you think, of this document?
Well, the document itself contains very important agreements that really set basically the new agenda for the coming years for the climate change regime. First of all, it establishes as a maximum limit for the increase in temperature, a 2-degree limit. It is still not enough. It is really not enough, according to what science tells us, on the needs for the Earth to be able to maintain a sustainable way of functioning. And for the future of some, especially the island states, which are under a very serious threat of losing part of their territories. Some of them may even disappear completely. So it's a big challenge, but still it was seen as a good step in the right direction. The fact that we did not have any agreement on that before Cancun really made people and the scientists and the environmentalists and the policymakers also very pessimistic about what to do. Having this limit now is very, very relevant for that reason. And it was also agreed that we will review it according to science and according also to the capacity of the international community to build up some more ambitious goals. We did manage also to put together a series of institutional mechanisms in order to make it possible that the international community develops a real global agenda on climate change by putting in place a financial mechanism and some mechanisms that are intending to be supportive to the actions in developing countries in this area, either on reforestation and the development, recovery of soils, or in the issue of adaptation that are really so necessary for so many developing countries that have at present no means to be able to undertake those kind of programs, or also in the area of mitigation, where we managed to put together commitments by Annex I countries and also voluntary measures by the rest of the countries, the developing countries and the countries that are not part of Annex I, but that or that have not ratified the Kyoto Protocol, like the United States, but that have been able to commit some goals in terms of mitigation activities. So all of this really indicates one clear political will of the international community to continue working towards a more sustainable way of production, a more sustainable way of life, lower carbon-based economies, and at the same time starts to put really very specific goals in this long process that, because it is true, this is going to be a long process. We will be in charge of these issues for a long time. They will be on the agenda for a very long time.
Yes, they will be. Unfortunately, the other side, which is the second commitment period under the Kyoto Protocol, didn't have such a success as the long-term cooperative action. But do you believe that there will still be room for major achievement there as well in the coming year?
Well, I certainly think that we need to move to much more ambitious goals, and the fact that the first commitment period under the Kyoto Protocol is coming to the end in 2012 already sets some kind of deadline, and we will need to be able to get to an agreement on what kind of commitments we will take up after the deadline of 2012. Although it's important to bear in mind that the Kyoto Protocol itself will remain in force, because it is not, that has no expiration date. It's the commitment period that has, let's say, a limit, and that will come to an end at the end of 2012. I believe that if we are able to put into practice all the agreements that we were able to reach in Cancun, and to have as soon as possible all these institutional framework operating, we should be able to generate the necessary confidence in governments to be able to take up more ambitious commitments into the future. I think we saw in the last year a very important development in the position of some key members of the international community. Key members mainly because of their contribution in terms of emissions of greenhouse gas emissions, but also in terms of their potential for growth and their potential for contributing in this fight against climate change. And this is the case of India, this is the case of China, and this is the case also of other emerging countries. Of course, Mexico had already been very committed for quite some time, but there are other emerging countries that still were kind of reluctant to take up more commitments. But I think it is now clear that really the international community has to act together, regardless of the need to make the distinction between really legally binding commitments or voluntary commitments, but it is clear now that we all have to make part of this effort.
Madam Minister, you got a standing ovation at the end of the conference. This must have been a very important moment in your life. I think that your diplomatic skills and the skills of your team showed that you can have an impact, and that's what the world saw. What would be the recommendation that you would give to the next president of the climate change conference?
Well, I'm closely in touch with my good friend and colleague, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of South Africa, who will be chairing the conference, and we have agreed to work together, very closely together throughout the year. I certainly want to contribute, and I have told this very openly, to contribute to the biggest possible success in Durban. It is in the interest of mankind and, of course, in the interest of South Africa, who is a very, very close nation to us. It's difficult to say what to advise. Maybe I would just share with her exactly what I think was so important in bringing the Cancun conference to a success. And it's basically that we made an emphasis and maintained this emphasis in having a very inclusive, transparent, open process, in giving also the representatives, the negotiators, a space where they could just exchange views and try to dialogue with each other, listen to each other, because in many of the negotiating sessions, what I could see was that, in fact, there was no dialogue going on. Every government was coming, restating its position, and nobody was listening to each other. So we did innovate in the procedures. We did put in place a series of informal consultations among a group of about 40 countries, but always leaving the door open for anybody else who would want to join the exercise. Nobody was excluded. There were, as the initial group, a group of countries invited, but the invitation was actually extensive to anybody who would want to come. And we managed to get together throughout the year many times a group of around 40 and 50 countries. And this was the most important exercise, because this was a scenario where everybody knew, yes, in fact, here we are not negotiating, because this is not the negotiating body, it's not the working group, but here we are together in order to listen to each other and to try to understand each other's standpoint and interests. This is something that we need in our view, and the Mexican presidency has made already a proposal for a work program for this year that we need to do this year again, to give a space where governments can freely exchange views without being in the rigid framework of the negotiating session. And we are proposing even that for this year, this exercise, this informal exercise, be also enriched with exchanges with civil society, with members of the scientific community, the academic and scientific community, with members of the private sector as well, with parliamentarians. So we are envisaging a scenario where we will have informal consultations, first for all of those constituencies on their own, then among themselves, between themselves, then together with governments, and with all those inputs that governments go into the negotiating sessions. And I am sure this will be very enriching and very helpful in trying to find ways to push the agenda still forward.
Well, we will be following this, no doubt, with great interest. If I may end up with a personal question, you studied international law here at the Institute. Of course, we welcome students from all over the world, and there are many studying international law here. What advice would you give those students today when they're looking at a future career?
Well, I'm sure that the students here will know very well how to extract benefit from this wonderful experience, personal and professional, of spending some time of their lives here at the Institute. But what maybe I would like to do is to encourage them to really put a lot of enthusiasm and effort into their capacities to become these internationalists that are able to give guidance to so many issues that are today big challenges of our times, and not to lose faith in the importance of dialogue and cooperation, in the importance of really trying to put ourselves in the situation of the other ones, and really to be clear that this is the only way where we can be successful in bringing up a better world for the generations of tomorrow.
Thank you again for sharing your views with us.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Me here.
Thank you.
Thank you.